But what are the odds that the government will heed the private sector's call? And to discuss this further, we have One News's business editor, Regina Hing. Reg, thank you for joining us. Let me start off with this. Is it fair to say that the PCCI and the business community is getting impatient with the government's vaccination drive, that it wants to skip the tripartite deals?
Hi, Ed. Good evening. Good to have you. Thank you for having me, rather. I would say that the mere fact that a major chamber of commerce went so far as to issue a statement is a sign that there are members that are getting a little bit impatient, because usually the chambers are happy to take the government lead on major efforts. Also, you were running sound bites of PCCI Honorary Chairman Sergio Ortiz Luis earlier. When we spoke to him this afternoon, and it was a quite substantial conversation, he did also specifically say that rather than waiting a year for the vaccines, they wanted to buy vaccines directly for their employees because the business sector is really not doing so well. In fact, he says that a lot of them thought that recovery would be underway already at this point, but now look where we are. We're dealing with localized lockdowns again. There's a lot of uncertainty with all of these new variants. So that's what they're getting to at this point in time, which is that they don't want to waste another year, I guess, waiting and taking a wait and see approach. He says there's also a lot of businesses that are borrowing money just to continue their operations. I guess they're trying to ride out this economic slowdown. But at this point, they're becoming discouraged from continuing, which is really worrisome as well. I think the PCCI's point really was that not only does the government have limited funds to hit that all-important target of inoculating 70% of the population this year, but it's also hampered by all sorts of regulations and all sorts of legalities, precisely because it's working with national funds and donations. So
yes, that's correct.
This is where the private sector is willing to step in, and he even said that they're willing to pay double for the vaccines if it comes to that, if only the national government would allow them to go ahead.
Yeah, right. But speaking of legalities, but that's also precisely the point, I suppose. I do remember that the government is saying that you would need a commercial license of some sort for private sector to buy these vaccines without government's participation. I'm wondering how that factors in, if that was even considered, at least when you were discussing this with the PCCI.
That's right, Ed. There's a key distinction that we need to make here, right? So the PCCI is requesting that they buy directly from pharma companies, from vaccine manufacturers. And in fact, they're not only asking to buy directly, they're asking that they be allowed to import these vaccines tax-free into the country. They think that by doing so, it's a win-win for everyone involved. But what the government is saying, what spokesperson Harry Roque was saying, as you were playing earlier with his soundbite, he's saying that, look, there's likely not going to be a chance that the private sector will be allowed to do what they want to do, because they have to go into these vaccine deals under the tripartite agreement. So the difference is these tripartite agreements, as the name implies, they go in as a trio, right? So that's the national government, that's the private sector, that's the LGUs. They share the costs, and the private sector also shoulders part of the costs and gives the vaccine back to the national government in a kind of one-for-one deal, and which the national government takes and then distributes to the larger population, right? So we know that presidential spokesperson Harry Roque is in quarantine at the moment, but he has, I guess, been consistent in saying that they've said it over and over again. They cannot allow the private sector to go ahead and purchase vaccines directly because all these vaccines are not available for commercial use yet. They're just under what's known as EUAs, or emergency use authorizations. And for that matter, the national government has to be involved every step of the way. So if the question is, what are the chances that they may be allowed to go ahead? I think at this point in time, it doesn't seem very likely.
Okay, important insights coming from our One News business editor, Regina Hing. Thank you, Reg.